I'm inviting.
Hello and welcome to the supper table. Thank you so much for being here. Before we start talking about the secret lives of ex-Mormon housewives, would you like to go around and speak your greatest fears about talking with one another today in a public way, public-facing way?
Let's hit the ground running. Yes, let's do it. I'll go first. Yeah, there's some pretty deep fears in my system around speaking my experience here because, Mormonism is a very closed culture in a lot of ways. And there is like fear of consequences or retribution from family members that I still have that are still Mormon, still active, you know, and there's, just this sort of like little voice in me that likes a lot of privacy. So I'm like, what exactly do I want to share and how much of it do I want to share just for like, yeah, there's a lot going on there around being seen with what's truly been my experience and what consequences that might have.
Hmm. Yeah, I have I definitely have some banishment fears as well, from just regular community too, because I was raised both Mormon and in Minnesota, which are two very passive aggressive cultures on top of each other. So I definitely just feel this kind of nebulous energy of like, you'll say the thing and get banished. Oh, someone's knocking on my door. Hang on.
Banishment. Yes. This
I
is some
got
deep ancestral shit, right?
Yeah. Sorry, I've got to go. I'll tend to my kid in just a second. But and again, as we're talking about this,
This happened last time Laurel and I recorded this podcast. My kid ended up jumping on me and meowing, and I was like, "We're talking about motherhood, so
Yeah.
motherhood
oh
I've
well."
exists.
I've told my kids like go be in your room and be quiet. So we'll see.
I'll have
It
to
should
go.
happen. They're older, so
I know mine's older too. I just have to give her the phone so she can have music while she does other stuff.
yeah.
So that's one of my big fears. And then I think the other one is just like that there's still this like this expertise kind of fear, like, oh, I don't know enough to see. You have to know a lot of things and be very officially smart to be able to talk, which is probably more of a general female fear, and I think in this culture, not just Mormonism, but it's really expounded in Mormonism.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
My fears are not related to Mormonism because I did not grow up Mormon. Although I did grow up homeschooled and in like a kind of insular community in a way, which is part of why I've always related to the experience of people who grew up very religious. But yeah, I have some stuff around stumbling over my words or not being impressive enough or not having conducted enough thorough research or not having anything new to say. And yeah, this has been recording this podcast has been really good medicine for me. Um, Not only in terms of taking pressure off of myself to be super knowledgeable about everything, but because I am having to tolerate listening back to my own voice.
Mm-hmm.
And really glad for that experience because I'm feeling some semblance of actual self-love, which I've never really been able to experience before.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I feel nervous every time I record these, and I think that's just going to be how I feel, and that's okay.
I'm gonna go
Mm-hmm.
give my phone real quick.
Okay, go give the phone to your daughter. Um, Anna, would you like to introduce yourself for our listeners? Give a little. Oh, and I should mention too that you two have never met. So
Mm-mm.
I introduced you just
Hi,
a
Laurel.
few moments ago. I have spoken to you both individually here and there about this. Anna and I were talking at a party recently. I don't remember how it came up, but I was like, have you seen Secret Lives of Mormon Housewives, and you were like, "Have I seen it? Of course." Um, yeah. So yeah, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so hmm. Yeah, I it's a big question, but as far as regarding to like this portion, I was, born and raised Mormon. Both my mom and dad have pioneer ancestors on both of their mom and dad sides. I've got in my family history, the first members from Wales and the first members from Germany and, coming across the plains and all of those pioneer stories. And I've got general authorities of the first, when it was founded in my lines, and then they were all sent to, settle southern Utah, so like the St. George, Canaryville, Cedar City area in Utah, and so Mormon, and then they've got kind of the Wild West part of them that ensued after that too. My dad was in the Air Force, and so I grew up moving everywhere. But the one thing that was very, very consistent was church, because church is everywhere. Mormon church is everywhere. So no matter where I went, there was always that portion. And yeah, the church was a really like stable thing in my life for a really long time. It kept me feeling safe for a long time, or to a degree of safe, what felt like safety. And then I got married when I was 18. I did go to college, but then I was mostly a stay-at-home mom for a lot of years. I did teach dance. I had that whole like fringy woo-woo modern dance part of me, which at about the age of like 36, 37, I really started feeling like, well, I started feeling like something was wrong after the birth of my last daughter when I was about 31, 32. And it just developed and developed till I was about 36, 37, and to just a massive, what I would call spiritual awakening, somatic awakening in my body, which led to me pretty quickly leaving the church and going into a deep dive study of somatics and the body and mysticism and myth and the animist shamanic world and many of these things that I went back to school for massage therapy. I was having all these gifts come online and eventually led to the creation of a method I called neurosomatic integration that integrates these, you know, spiritual and energetic parts with our bodies and our emotional and mental, physical bodies as well. And I found it to be incredibly healing and integrating for me. So that's also what I do with other people as well. And um, working with clients, groups, and, you know, that kind of a thing. So I live right now in North Carolina, and yeah, left that marriage after 25 years. And so now I'm in a place of really, really loving and enjoying my sovereignty, as well as, my motherhood as my children are getting to be older and yeah, all that good stuff.
Thank you for sharing. Laurel, would you like to give us some context?
Hmm. Sorry, this is not. This was very unexpected. Uh, I just question Anna. Who are your Welsh ancestors on the Mormon side?
Um, I can't think of. I've got Evans's. I've got it's from the Foster line.
Okay.
I promise you, we go back and far enough. We're cousins. We're
Yeah. No,
like
I know
that's
because my so this is my dad's side goes way back to Mormon history, and then my husband on both sides as well. Actually, yeah, I think on both sides or at least one side. Um, yeah, but no, we also like Welsh is a big part of I know my lineage, and then the Benyon brothers who like I don't know if that's all like the Benyons are like this whole like brothers that like did a bunch of polygamy, and so like everyone's related from that line, and like
yeah.
um,
I've got polygamous in there as well, and
yep, yep.
all those things. The roundies who are in the yeah. It just goes back. We'll have to compare our family history at some point.
It's just interesting to me because one of the things, oh gosh, and it's just because I'm feeling it right now. Um, one of my faith transition things was feeling a pull from an ancestral pull.
Absolutely.
Absolutely deep. And it's like, and I feel it when I'm with other Mormons who have been through, like, because our experiences are like so fucking similar.
Yeah.
And it's part of what like informs a lot of my own theories about reality itself, of how we are just like cells in a larger body, because the ex-Mormon body like it's doing some things that I started to go, oh, I'm just like part of this larger whatever it is that, oh, my speaker just changed. I don't know why. Okay, I hope that worked. But yeah, I'm just part of like this larger movement happening in this larger body that seems to be especially affecting women at this time, at, right in their 30s and 40s.
Yeah.
And mine was also, so I'll say, I was born and raised Mormon, never in Utah. I went to Utah for school, but I was always outside of the Jello Belt, as they call it. And so I grew up in Texas and Minnesota. And sorry, my speaker keeps changing and I don't know. Can
It
you guys
sounds
hear
the
me?
same.
Okay, good. That's
Sounds the
fine. And I'll
same.
just, it's just doing weird things. Um, Yeah, so I grew up, yeah, in Minnesota. I had a big arts background and also an intellectual background. Like my grandfather founded a Mormon magazine called Dialogue, which is an intellectual magazine. And so like I grew up in this kind of Mormon home where like philosophy and comparative religion was talked about a lot. And in some ways, that actually kept me in the church longer, because I grew up in this environment where it's like, oh, we can like talk about all these things. Like there's so much truth everywhere, and all the positive aspects of Mormonism were really fostered, and the negative ones were kind of overlooked. Um, and and so I remember finding the Tao Te Ching when I was in ninth grade, and just being like, what is this? And like,
I also found it in ninth grade. Go ahead. And I have a very similar family. My parents are really freaking smart. They're scholars. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, Mormonism like is fascinating when you get on the inside of the culture. It's so, I think this is why we have so many creative writers in Mormonism, because like you become so creative at like worldview building. I mean, like that's what Joseph Smith did. He combined all these different elements that really resonated in a spiritual level. They weren't just like, wasn't like an AI version of crafting a religion. It was stuff that really spoke to people and that he was drawn to, and like put it all together in this really creative way, that did touch something in people, and that does touch something in people. And that's why it was like, as an energetically sensitive person my whole life, like I would go to church and I would feel things. I would have experiences that later I realized were kind of psychedelic. Like, but I didn't do that because I was very good. But anyway, my own life was, I grew up, I was always drawn to the arts as a performing artist. I went to BYU for musical theater, and that has a very good music theater program. A lot of my friends went to Broadway from there. But I got sick. I got really sick because I went on a mission. And I just like, I was such a serious oldest child gonna save the world. Like, I just took on so much energy and so much responsibility that just like destroyed my nervous system. Because I was also being like open all the time. And I served my mission in South Carolina, which is one of the most fucking haunted places in the United States. And Anyway, there's a whole side thing though, however, that serving a mission helped me actually understand on a much deeper level like where racism actually comes from, instead of like, being from Minnesota where it's like we're very intellectual about it. Like I was actually in the South. I could feel all these spirits. I didn't know what I was feeling at the time, but like there's a lot of restless energy there. Um, so anyway, that's a whole other side topic, but I'm going to go back, and now we're coming back. And so like my journey was, I got married. My health meant I couldn't go to New York City because I was having so many recurring health issues. Eventually, I got enough under control that when we moved back to Minnesota, where I'm from, I could start having kids. And my big thing was when I was pregnant, all of a sudden, it was like this giant void. It was just like, where the fuck is my mother? Like it was just like, and I mean, I kind of muted it, but it was like this incessant question that kept coming in. It's like, where is my mother? Where is my mother? Where is my mother? Um, because I could feel as I was getting pregnant, I'm like, I can feel something coming inside me that is but I don't know what's happening. Something like really sacred and carnal at the same time is happening in my body. And Mormonism has everything lined out. So I was like, why isn't this lined out? Why aren't we being told what's going on here? And I just began this whole quest for the mother. Like, where is the sacred mother? I needed her. And basically I started having, again, especially after the birth of my second, um, very big, powerful experiences that did not fit into any box within Mormonism, with the mother, with themes of darkness, with themes of the body, with themes of something being lost that used to be present in human culture. And also with themes of like, yeah, being much more deeply connected to the natural world. So that kind of went on this whole journey, to where again I started then also getting into somatics and spirituality, like all other kinds of spirituality, understanding how energy moves, how much we don't know, but we're trying to figure things out. Coming out of a background that knew everything, and yeah, and so currently, like I have a big, I have a performance background. I've been composing more. I do song circles called primal singing that are about helping people tap into a deeper level of vocalization and listening to their bodies, to each other, into the environment around them, to like start creating vocalizing from that. Study folk music and stuff like that, like ancient folk music, to understand like what is singing and how did we really start doing it. Also studied like neo tantra and just the body. For me, a big thing in my ancestry is a lot of sexual trauma, and like I could just feel that so loud in my system. And so I started researching a lot of like just how do we connect back to the body with sensuality in a way that is not extractive or disassociative, but is actually like connecting to our essential eros and life force. um, so part of that was I did professional cuddling. I also, like I said, trained in some other things just to learn like what was going on in the body. And yeah, currently I am trying to figure out like how to best uh like become whatever it is life is making me. Um and I will say the last thing on that though is yeah, a lot of this, one thing I am grateful to in Mormonism is there was an innate connection to ancestry. Like as I was leaving the church, I got a really distinct impression one time when I was listening to the podcast Year of Polygamy that goes into all the details about polygamy and takes it apart. Mormonism whitewashes its history a lot. Like we're really, really scared of all of our darkness and our negativity, and our mess. And I got this very distinct impression when I was listening to this, where it was, I gave voice to it. It's like the ancestors were saying, do not whitewash us. Do not take away our lives. Do not lie about who we were. We went through this so you don't fucking have to again. Like, that's our gift to you. Like, don't whitewash this. Really see it for what it is. See the abuse where it happens. See the mistakes where they happened. Really look at them so that you don't have to keep repeating them. Like you're denying, like that's the gift we give to you. Our lives are in vain if our lives are in vain to you as our descendants if you don't look at us, if you don't really see us for what and who we were in our full complexity. And that's, to me that was like, oh, that's real love. That's real love, is saying I give you all of myself, however that is useful to you, so that this family body can continue to exist in a better way. And so in that sense, I do, I just had this impression to invoke the ancestors in this conversation, because I have felt them so many times in this, the loneliness of the women in my ancestral line and the loneliness of the men. And I think their genuine desire through all of any mistakes they made, for their descendants to live better than they did. So anyway, there's my intro.
Whew. Yeah. I mean, listening to both of you share, and we're just scratching the surface. Yeah, it brings up a lot of feelings for me too. And I think that part of the reason why I am fascinated by Mormonism, and in particular the arc of the Mormon housewife, the Mormon housewife who leaves Mormonism or subverts it in some way, is because I can relate to it. And it's almost like Mormonism offers, I want to say funhouse mirror image or something, or like it's like Mormonism, it like illustrates the basic mechanics of, or this arc of the Mormon housewife leaving Mormonism. It illustrates how oppression for the sake of maintaining the status quo or privileging social roles over unique individual self-expression and the way we experience ourselves as individuals, or social pressure in general, socialization in general. It illustrates how all of those forces operate in human life, but like with the intensity dial turned all the way up so that we can see it more clearly. And in particular, this good girl turns bad girl arc, Sandy from Greece comes to mind, right? That so many people, so many women and people with female socialization go through in one form or another. Where we get trapped in the double bind between the good mother and the bad mother, the good girl and the bad girl, or in a internal push-pull dynamic as we try to determine what is true for us outside of social pressure and social roles. Yeah, and a big part of that is returning to the body when there's a lot of sexual shame, and a lot of patriarchal and misogynistic conditioning around what sex is and means and who sex is for and pleasure and all of that. And of course, the connection between our spiritual life and our erotic life, and how that's like really obscured from us when we have the good girl social conditioning. It's like turned on its head, and then as we reach womanhood and motherhood, we discover we have been lied to, something has been taken from us or attempted to be taken from us. It's all backward, like sex is actually a woman's thing, so on and so forth. But to offer a little more background information here before we circle back to some of these things, for those of you who are not in the know about how Mormonism is appearing in the mainstream culture and pop culture right now, I've pulled an excerpt from a New York Times article called "Mormon Women Are Taking Over Our Screens." So I'm going to read a bit from this article because it offers such a great snapshot of kind of like what Mormonism is representing in mainstream pop collective cultural consciousness right now, and these points of fascination that outsiders feel looking in. The women of Secret Lives, so this is referring to the reality TV show Secret Lives of Mormon Housewives, confront gender roles in their marriages while enjoying dirty sodas. Since the church counsels against drinking alcohol, though Lisa Barlow, the only practicing church member on Real Housewives, promotes her tequila brand on her show. Church members on TikTok garnered millions of views, showing their search for the latest in modest undergarments. And it's not just social media success. Influencer Nara Smith, known for from scratch cooking her husband's cravings, lent her name to a $28 garlic oil, while Hannah Nealman, known across her social handles as Ballerina Farms, sells on her website the sourdough starter she serves to her husband and 8 children. These unscripted portrayals of women on reality TV and social media are a far cry from past pop culture depictions, which were often scripted formats that skewed satirical or investigative or focused on polygamy, which was disavowed from the church in 1890, though some fundamentalist sects still practice it. There was HBO's Big Love, which premiered in 2006. In 2010, TLC's Sister Wives, a reality show, followed Cody Brown and his 4 wives. The sweetly sacrilegious The Book of Mormon, a musical about a church mission to Uganda, has run on Broadway since 2011. And the FX miniseries Under the Banner of Heaven, 2022, adapted the investigative book about the murder of a female church member and her daughter by fundamentalist family members. The current crop of representation focuses on the lifestyles of women. men are peripheral, raised in the church, who strike a delicate balance of adherence to and rejection of doctrine while living in a digital age. The church declined to comment for this article, but referred to a statement on its website, which said that a number of recent productions depict lifestyles and practices blatantly inconsistent with the teachings of the church. So that's all in the soup, at least in, again, mainstream society and pop culture. And the point that sticks out to me is the part about how there is this delicate dance that these women are doing, the sweetly sacrilegious, is that what they said? No, it was some other part here. It was about just like how the women on the Secret Lives of Mormon Housewives are sort of at once presenting themselves as devout, but then also as women who are breaking the mold. There's this emphasis on how brave they are for defying gender conventions and challenging church norms, so on and so forth. So in the reality TV version, they're really playing up the drama of this. And obviously that's going to be appealing when many people have experienced some form of rebellion from the norms within which they grew up and have also experienced the social consequence of that rebellion. But yeah, I'm curious, why do you think people are fascinated by Mormonism and by the Mormon housewife in particular?
I would love to speak to this. As you're talking, Alyssa, I'm just like getting hotter and hotter. And just feel like massive amounts of energy churning in my body. Um, that show particularly, if you look at, like, I've been watching the, Mormon shows as they were for a while, but this one in particular focuses on young, very sexy women who are empowered. It's like this show is like patriarchy's wet dream. It's like, here's these beautiful, vivacious, full of life women who are very fertile. They're very virginal, and yet they get to be the whore. It's all very archetypal. It's like, maybe we can project every single archetype onto these women. Maybe we can have one for every single one, where we can have angels and villains and virgins and whores, and not only are they at home, taking care of the children, they're also earning a ton of money. In my experience, Mormonism, especially a Utah Mormon, and Laurel kind of hit on this. Utah Mormons are a different brand. I'm just going to say it. I'm not everybody. I'm not saying every single person, but as a culture. And I'll also say that the culture is a lot of times different than the religion. As a culture, Utah especially is very superficial, loves beauty, loves youth, loves money. Money, money, money. And so, yes, these women are like the poster child of everything that Mormons want to be, and really all that, like, all of us culturally love and want. We are a youth obsessed, dare I say, pedophilic culture who obsesses over youth as a beauty standard. My question is, where are the trad wives that are over 35? It doesn't seem to be that sustainable of a model, you know. The what I see in my own self as well as my own practice, and I'll say this for most high demand religions, the women burn out very early. Many of them have chronic illness. I had it myself. Sounds like Laurel's dealt with it myself. I still deal with it. The majority of my clients still deal with it. And you, Laurel, also touched on the fact of being open. As a Mormon church and a Mormon culture, they teach women to be open and boundless and not have boundaries. Do not say no. You are actually not a person. You are a wife. You are a mother. You are a church member. You are 7 or 8 things. Then at the very end of the bottom, then maybe you're a person. So even in um, the temple, which is the highest form of being a Mormon, you truly cannot have salvation unless you're attached to and married to a man. You are pledging your obedience and your spirit to a man, and then he pledges his to God. You don't pledge yours to God. You know, the entire machine of the Mormon church, and I'm going to say, I'm not going to sound again, not saying people on an individual basis, but as an entity, it's very extractive to the energy of women primarily. And it is fueled by that unpaid labor of women. And I will tell you, it's not all the men doing all this. People who enforced patriarchy to me were mostly women in the church. It wasn't really what men were saying to me, it was what women were saying to me. And I understand it's systemic, you know, the higher ups are men and all of this. And again, individually, Mormons are incredible. They're so full of service. They're so full of love and creativity. Mormons really value creativity and artistry. And I freely tell people I'm really good at my job now because of so much of what I learned when I was Mormon. The events that I put on now, where people come and are like, I feel such a sense of belonging. I feel so good here and I feel taken care of. And I also feel like expanded and, you know, all this and all this. I learned a lot of that from being Mormon, from being in Relief Society and being in primary and being in state callings and all those things. Um, but yeah, the show, it's also, I would say, the culmination of where we are in our ancestral trauma. Because if you remember, we're not that old. We're not that old as far as a religion or as a, you know, Utah as a state. So when you have these generations and generations that have been so, have such high demand on their energy and on their resources and on their psyche, there's so much Utah has the highest, usually like sexual assault in the country. It has the
Highest
high
rate of teen suicide amongst boys. I remember that one.
and highest like antidepressive medication rates. Utah is a fucking traumatized state. Fucking traumatized. Okay. And I also share that experience that Laurel shared, that what really brought me out of the church and brought me into my own awakening was the Great Mother. It was her whispering to me, feeling that dark, quiet place of peace with her, and her showing me. I say she lovingly held me by the hand step by step out of the church to show me that there is more. And I think that these women on this show represent so many of the other women who are just in deep amounts of ancestral trauma and who are trying to find themselves because they've been open so much. Transcend self, transcend ego. There's a lot of religious and spiritual philosophy around let go of the ego, transcend self, open, open, open. Those people who are usually teaching that are usually male philosophers. And I agree that men probably need to go out of themselves to find God. Most women need to find themselves and become more boundaried to find God, to find themselves. They need to, what I have seen with myself and with the clients that I work with, it's not saying yes more. We have been saying yes our whole lives. We've been taking it in our whole lives. And yeah, we fucking see. Mystic, Mormons are mystic. We fucking see. We see, we feel, we know. We have a relationship with that knowing. It's saying no, it's having boundaries and helping us feel ourselves like we've never felt before, like our mothers and our grandmothers never felt before. That's the work of what these women are trying to do. And you watch them on the TV show and they're trying so hard to find themselves. And then they get the husband in or they get the other person in. And then they fall back. And then they come back to themselves and then they fall back and they come back to themselves. So it's like, it's watching transformation like right before our eyes. It's fucking fascinating. I love the show.
It's watching how women can't win no matter what they do because
In that system of patriarchy. Because guess what? You
yeah.
can win when you leave.
Yeah, it's like they're trying to almost like hack the system by embodying the ideals of the system, but they're still obviously suffering so deeply to
So
the
the
point where I actually can't even watch the show anymore because it was too upsetting to watch these women who are clearly in pain and who are clearly dealing with all kinds of trauma just have that be turned into a spectacle. You know, we can go on and on about the ethics of reality TV, but Celeste Davis, who wrote an essay on Substack called Shh, no one tell the men they are misbehaving. It's a secret. She writes a lot about internalized misogyny and how you can just see it everywhere in this reality TV show. And um, she writes the intense pressure on a Mormon woman to be simultaneously a 1950s June Cleaver, wife, mother, servant, maid, and a Jessica Rabbit sex goddess. She talks about how that comes up over and over again and how the Mormon wives of this show have risen up and fulfilled their godly duty. They have checked the check boxes assigned to them. Get married young, check. Pop out lots of babies, check. Support your husband, check. Look sexy as hell, check. And are they rewarded for dutifully accomplishing all of their assigned tasks? No, the world does nothing but shit on them for it. And again, I think this is something that many women, if not most women in our culture, can relate to, or I guess at the very least, most middle class white women can relate to this. And as you said earlier, there's a reason why there aren't many trad wives over 30 or 35. Like you might play with this a little bit when you're younger. I even went through a phase when I was younger where I entertained deconstructing feminism and what it would feel like to relate to men in a post-feminist way. And of course, now I'm 36 and have two kids, and I'm sick and divorced, and I'm having a great feminist revival. Surprise, surprise. Men treat you really differently when you're not a hot 20-year-old anymore. And you remember why the mothers and, you know, why they relied on feminist principles in the first place and why they created those principles as an escape hatch in the first place. And but yeah, Laurel, I'm curious to hear from you about all of this and also why people are so fascinated.
Yeah. I mean, I just was taking notes on like, yeah, it's just it's so great talking to another mystic ex-Mormon because you're just like, yes, yes, yes. But there's something that I noticed when I was leaving Mormonism that I became fascinated by in my last years. Like my leaving was kind of a gradual process. I had sort of a filtering off of actual like literal faith belief, but kind of stuck around because I again like I'm in Minnesota. It's not a very extremist kind of political place for Mormonism here. It was more just like boring. And it started to feel spiritually dead after a while, but had nice people that I loved. And so I was still there and I could feel that spiritual connection I could feel in community. Like I was feeling that just because I was with other people and we were trying to reach for something or connect to something sacred. But in an overall sense, I felt like it was just like I was dying. However, so that was just to say that like my leaving was gradual, but I was noticing as I was leaving and I was studying things like animism and studying like how concepts of like how energy and spirits work, because like I should also state, like when I was on my mission, we would talk about spirits existing all the time. Like that's actually very normal in Mormonism, to talk about like the dead talking to you, to talk about like spirits influencing you. That's part of the theology. It's a very binary kind of thing, like the spirits are good or evil. Though if you go, again, if you go deep into Mormon culture, there is a lot of nuance in that. Like some people are really fascinated by how do spirits interact, and people can go really down some rabbit holes with Mormon theology. But there is a general belief in spirits. There's a general belief that like the dead can communicate with the living and we're still connected. Um, and I was fascinated with how Mormons especially seem easily possessed, either by archetypes or by energies. Like I was noticing there was a few people, again, and these are, again, Mormonism, a huge spectrum of people. Most people are pretty like milk toast, like it's just like the spirituality is just kind of there. But every group of people will have big personalities. And I just noticed that like the big personalities in Mormonism seemed very prone to possession, either by big energies, kind of fantastical kinds of things, or the other thing when you're talking about this that made me think of is being possessed by archetypes. Like there is an energy that gets created with the I don't know how I would explain it, but it's almost like the desires and the influence and whatever other unseen forces create this archetype that then exists in the culture, that then women feel like they have to embody this archetype. It's very much like I'm going to use my physical body to embody this spiritual energy without recognizing that's really what I'm doing. And that's what I feel like happens in Mormonism. And even like after leaving it, I can notice like the imprints of that in my system. Like I still recognize the imprints where I'm like, there is a whole way my system was oriented towards reality, how my body, how my being is supposed to be oriented towards reality, that there's still these echoes of it in there, of like, I should feel bad about something because I'm not being good in the way I'm supposed to be good, even though it makes no sense in this context that I'm in right now. And I think that it's part of it is that being open, and part of it is the binary view that everything's good or evil. So if you're open to something and it's within the boundaries of what's considered good, then you should just be open to it. So like if you're feeling like, yes, I want to be a great mother, that is a good spirit, you should be totally open to that spirit. You shouldn't question it at all. You should just like let that energy in. And like, again, I'm an actor too, so I understand that process of like trying to become something. And so in a lived way though, you start to like invite that, like, yes, I need to become this archetype or this version or this blueprint that becomes a cultural archetype, and it becomes deeply intertwined with your body, with your spirit, with your mind. And I find that a lot of men who in Mormonism who kind of go off the deep end, if they, there's a few that I would follow, like the guy who started Underground Railroad, the child trafficking group. I became sort of fascinated by him because he became the epitome to me of like unhealthy Mormon spirituality in men that's very disembodied, but living out of fantasy of I'm this like superhero. Like it's very like I'm a superhero. I'm going in, even though I'm actually making things worse in half the places I go, and he's like possessed by this vision of himself being this character. And then to the point where he's not even in touch with his own actual desires and ends up sexually harassing the people he's working with and doing the very thing his organization is supposed to be against. And I was just fascinated by like what is going on in the system and in the culture that creates this kind of like, because he sounds possessed when I would listen to the things he would say. It's like disconnected from reality, but so disconnected from like on the ground reality, but very connected to some alternative reality that's like happening. And I felt that as a Mormon too, where like, that's the thing with spiritual experiences is like you are connecting to an energy that's real. It may not actually be relevant to what's actually happening around you, but those energies are real and they affect us and they move our systems. And what Mormonism does is then give that a story and a structure for that energy to then be embodied through you. And as a woman, that energy is very specific. It is like you are supposed to be this kind of woman who is open, giving, just this epitome of like this just about like this open yoni that's just gonna like take in everything, and like you're both sensual but only to the right people at the right time. Like you can somehow embody like modesty and then also be like have the body of like a porn star underneath, and like and somehow you're just gonna embody all of this. But what you're really embodying is, again, like Anna said, it's like all of the patriarchal archetypes are just like, it's like all the patriarchal desires are just thrown onto you. And I think, to very specifically answer your question, Alyssa, about why this is so appealing, sorry, I'm going a very roundabout thread, but I promise it connects. When I was deconstructing a lot of this, I wasn't realizing that's what I was doing, but I was having these deep experiences, like basically processing the energy of my lineage. I would go into like kind of these meditative states and sense the energies that were in my system. And one of them was, okay, this is going to get kind of dark. Are we good going dark? And okay. So when I'm processing the energies I can feel in my system, in my lineage, there's a lot of sexual abuse. There's a lot of really dark sexual abuse, very warped sexuality. And I was processing the desires that come from that, what kind of things start to emerge in my own system, like what kind of erotica am I drawn to? What kind of porn am I drawn to because of when this energy is active in my system? And when I was a freshman at BYU, I had done a research project on pornography. Of course, it was at BYU, so it was all very anti-porn, and porn is, all porn is the worst evil ever. And so, of course, I researched like the worst of the worst porn, and how it affected people. But that worst of the worst porn, one of the things they found is that specifically rape porn, it tells a story to men's nervous systems, and it tells a story that women don't actually know what they want. You need to rape them. And then once you rape them, then they'll realize they actually wanted that. And that what they actually wanted was for you to come in, invade their system, and give them the thing they didn't know they wanted. And now and it's like it's just this inversion, like their whole existence is about pleasing you now. All that sensuality, all that desire is about pleasing you. And as I was pondering like the polygamy and my ancestry, it just like hit me. It's like the way polygamy is set up in the Mormon church, it's the same energy as rape porn. It's the same energy. It's dressed in a white tie. It's just dressed in a white shirt and a tie, because what it says, there's a justification many women hear about the afterlife, that we're going to have polygamy, your man's going to have more than one wife, but it's okay, you'll like it because you'll understand. Once you're in the afterlife, you'll understand. You just don't understand because you're just too jealous and imperfect right now. You're just not perfected yet. You're too insecure. You're not good enough yet. If you were really good, you would understand why polygamy is really of God. But don't worry, once you're in heaven, God will help you understand why this is good. And when I got to the root of both of these mentalities, it's the epitome of like true toxic masculinity that comes into the sacred feminine and tries to take its existence and says, you do not exist without me, which is, of course, the reverse is true. But at that time, I didn't know that. But I was trying to process this energy, and I could feel what this energy was doing to women, was saying, you will only be happy existing if you please me. That is the totality of your existence. You do not exist outside of me being pleased by you, whether that is sexually or spiritually or as a partner. Your existence does not matter until you please me. You don't exist until then. And that I did not understand what I was experiencing at the time, but I started to notice this energetic pattern. And it was also when I was coming into contact with the mother, who is existence. And started to go, I think this is really fucked up. Something's very fucked up here. However, tying this all back to the archetype thing, it's a really deep level of when you embody these archetypes that are male ideals. because our culture has been so conditioned by a very toxic version of masculinity and patriarchy that tries to take from the feminine, to take power from the feminine and claim it for its own. When you embody those archetypes, you feel like you're getting power because you are feeding what the unhealthy masculine energy wants. So you feel like you exist. And it gives you this sense that I exist now, because this version of masculinity, which again is very warped and also makes me very sad for my male ancestors because it was so bad for them too. But this warped version, this warped like virus that gets into things, basically says like, you have to, for men, it's you have to control the feminine, you have to dominate her, so you don't actually get to enjoy her, you don't get to surrender to her, you don't get to like fully just like bask in her deliciousness and feel your own pleasure. And for women, it's you don't even exist until you please the masculine. And for me, it's that the question became, where is existence actually coming from? Because Mormonism tells you it is this male god and then puts all these stories about polygamy and your existence is dependent on masculinity. And when I started feeling the mother, sorry. I had an experience with her where I was one of my most powerful experiences where I just felt her come in and felt her presence in all things. And I remember just kind of going, why are we like, what happened? What about all this thing? You were erased. You were this. And I, honestly, again, mystical experience, hard to describe, but I felt her laugh. Like she was just laughing. And she was like, you can't, I am you. Like, I am all things. You cannot get rid of me. This is like little kids playing with rocks outside and they think they're king of a mountain. But I'm all of those things. They can't get rid of me. They don't exist without me. And so how that ties back is that I think what this inversion is like there's so many women who are we've lost the source of actual creation. It's been co-opted, and there's many names and many theories on how that happened, but just from a direct experience of like how I felt in my system was I felt it as this realizing that like whatever that energy is that justifies rape porn, that says women need to be raped, they need to be dominated because that their existence is actually incorrect until a man controls them. Was the same thing in polygamy, and that it was this absolute like very warped, twisted hunger for the feminine that was so warped that it couldn't even like feel itself. And so the only way for it to like feel itself was to like kind of take it from the feminine and convince the feminine that it had to submit, or else it didn't exist. It's a complete inversion. And anyway, that's my thing about the archetypes. Why I think on a very deep level, why I think they're so appealing is that you're stepping into a patriarchal world and you're embodying the archetype this patriarchal world has told you gives you power and existence. And otherwise, because if you're a single woman in Mormonism, like when I was in the church, single women who are not partnered feel invisible. Anyway, that's all I'll say on that because
it's very much about our larger culture, or at least like larger kind of dominator culture of the white middle class, processing this revelation of the extent of the family dysfunction and how the facade of embodying the quote unquote American dream, right? Like Mormons are very much the epitome of this white middle class American family fantasy. They're high achieving and morally disciplined. They make a lot of money. They support their own. There's more or less intact community and social infrastructures. Men are men and women are women, et cetera, et cetera. And this is compared to the apathy and disenchantment of the secular middle class, right? That so many of us have grown up in. So it's like you see that even there where people are embodying the ideal, there's all this, secret, not so secret dysfunction. There's some of the darkest shit imaginable happening in the shadows. there is this degradation of the Holy Mother, but then at the same time, this idealization of her. And I always think about political dysfunction through the lens of understanding family dysfunction because, of course, you can't separate them. Family dysfunction is very much reflected in our political dysfunction, and the way that family dysfunction maintains itself through social structures like religion and patriarchy is identical to how political dysfunction maintains itself. And here we are, in 2026, dealing with some pretty serious daddy issues. Hence Trump being elected president of the United States. Trump himself represents like a man who has a lot of lecherous and like low integrity. He's like lecherous and low integrity, but some people have this weird trauma entanglement with him where they feel like he's daddy who's going to come save us from financial ruin and scary brown people from invading our country. And so yeah, I do think that it's like, there is something mystical happening with Mormonism right now, or like I guess it's been the past 20 years that is helping the rest of us understand our family dysfunction. And is also, it's like y'all have like played out for us what happens when we do embody that dream. Like, it's kind of like in the spirit of I read the book so you don't have to. I mean, and but I also want to ask here too, because I'm becoming aware of the fact that like whoever's listening to this might not understand terminology like possession or understand really what we mean when we talk about archetypes. A lot of people who deconstruct after they leave organized religion land in atheism, and develop an aversion to anything that isn't, quantifiable, rational, or rooted in secular society. That didn't happen for either of you. And what I've noticed is that amongst Mormons who leave Mormonism but stay within spirituality, there is this sensitivity to the way things like New Ageism replicate patterns of religious thought, and people are better able to navigate the pitfalls that come with alternative spirituality and New Ageism because of that upbringing. Um, and they're also at the same time still open to mysticism as a force that shapes things like politics, let alone, family life and like how we understand and experience gender and gender roles. So can you each talk about that a little bit? Like, why didn't you land in atheism? What was that like for you to leave a religious community but still remain in touch with your spiritual self and the need for a relationship with God or divinity or spirits, or like how do you navigate all of that when you're in this state, especially like right after leaving a church where your identity is so fragile, I imagine, and you're like rebuilding an entire worldview. Yeah, what's that been like for you, and where have you landed with all of that?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking. And I think Laurel really hit it on the head because as a Mormon woman, you literally don't exist. You're not a person. You're not a person. Those are the words that I would use all the time with myself. It's like, it's this very disassociated state. And you can talk about it in terms of spirituality or psychology, mental health. You can talk about it in whatever lens you want to. It's a very disassociated state. It's a state where you are in an incredible amount of yang energy. So it's very a doing state. Stay very, 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 very busy. So you don't have any time to actually think or sit or feel. So the thing that actually becomes very magical is that yin energy or feminine energy, if you want to call it, of just being with yourself and just being with your emotions and your thoughts and your state. And that is a very healing experience. And I also had very mystical experiences of being with the Great Mother and in her many forms. You know, I got very deeply into a study around tantra or neo tantra or around Hindu mythology or Buddhist mythology, or you know, the symbolism of Kali Ma, the great terrible mother, cutting off heads and letting the blood out and letting yourself scream. The biggest, most healing experiences I've had, well, the things that were in the beginning were really, really healing for me, was to make sure that I got in touch with my rage and make sure that I got in touch with my grief. I love Martin Prechtel's work. He has that beautiful talk on grief and praise, and how we are the ones who have to purge this ancestral grief and rage from our bodies. I had very mystical experiences with my grandmothers. I have one grandmother on my mother's side who was born a slave in Tennessee. She, at the age of 17, I think she had her first baby by her master. She had then two or three more children by him. At one point, I don't know if his first wife died or if he divorced her, but at one point he decided he was going to take up with the Mormon church, and he married her. He marries her, takes her across the plains. She's very light-skinned, so that when they get to Utah, they pass her off as white. Talk about whitewashing. They pass her off as white, and she has like four more kids or something. I had her coming to me. I just had these memories of her and these stories of her. And I just was like asking my parents, and I went on, you know, we have familysearch.com, you know, ancestry.com. And I saw her picture, and I just like, I had several experiences where I just grieved and cried and raged with her story in my body, and the many, many stories of, you know, just, just the extraction of the creative force that is in women. And in men. Men are taught that they have to be a provider. They have to be emotionless and strong all the time and control their women and never rest and just overwork all the damn time. And, you know, their life force is also extracted, because I really believe men and women both have, and non-binary people, we all have we all have masculine and feminine, we all have yin and yang. And the church generally extracts your yin energy. It extracts your creative power from all of the sexes, but specifically women. I mean, we have wombs. We have, you know, if you have a womb, regardless of your gender, you are extracted from in deep ways. And so for me, how did I stay? It's like I got a greater measure of spirit when I left. I was in I was in the church looking around for crumbs, you know, looking around for like, where is that connection? Where is spirit? Where is love? Where is this like thing that's greater than me? You know, where is this thing that they keep promising? And I did have mystical experiences in the church, and I attribute it to the church instead of just attributing it to like the greaterness of existence, you know? So for me, it was not hard to maintain. I just got such a outpouring of spirit once I left, an outpouring of feeling my own heart, my own body, my own sexuality. My sexual healing was very connected with my spiritual healing, and knowing that my energy was for me, my sexual energy was for me. It wasn't for someone else to use for their purposes, you know. Um, there's just been so many experiences that I cannot deny that were real. And the more again, going to massage therapy school, going to sweat lodges, going to psychedelic journeys, going to working with other people in their healing processes, I've just been shown time and time and time again that we are something beyond just the physical. We are something beyond a mental body. We are a mental body, emotional body, physical body, energy body, and spirit body. And that animus force that creates life goes through me, and it goes through everything, every rock and flower and tree and animal and piece of earth and river. It's truly, it's real for me.
I have such the temptation to be like, amen. Like, we were just in testimony meeting. um, yeah, I would say for me, like, yeah, I mean, I left, like, because my thing was that I was having spiritual experiences. The reason I left is because I was having spiritual experiences that were so much more powerful and it didn't fit into the church box. And so I was just like, well, I'm going to go there. Um, and and in fact, it was actually like I stayed in the church longer than I think I would have because I couldn't find another spiritual home. Like, or I didn't know that I didn't, a lot of ex-Mormons, especially men, do become atheists. And I think here, this is my theory. I don't want to speak to their experience because everyone's is different. But I do know a lot of men who kind of become atheist or agnostic. A lot of it feels like it stems from the sense of betrayal, like they feel like they were betrayed, like they were told that if they felt something it was this, and because it wasn't that, they get like really mad. They're like, well, then nothing exists. Like it's all made up, all of this. um Again, that's not every man, it's not everyone's experience. I just know quite a few men that was their experience. Like they felt so angry at the betrayal of being told this feeling was one thing and it wasn't that, and they were being used, that like they just had to reject all spirituality. It's like this con game. Everything's a con game then. And so I think a lot of people, it depends how rooted you were in a larger experience of spirituality before you leave the church. Because again, my upbringing was such that it did acknowledge like there is spirituality in all things. Of course, we had the correct spirituality or the most correct one, but like it wasn't that there was no spiritual connection. And so yeah, for me, it was just, it had always been, even though I get, life is confusing and all that, like at the end of the day, like this core driving desire of mine has always been since I was little is to know God. Um, like in more intimacy, to actually really know and understand God. I think for me, the biggest challenge is just dealing with, talking about the echoes, is like actually dealing with shame that is still in the system. When I have big experiences, and then there's a shame particle that's still in there that's like, but I don't have authority to have, like to be doing this, or and that's not just from Mormonism. That is the larger culture too. So yeah. um and there is I mean, also I got a concussion last year, so all of my understanding, like just my literal perception, got thrown off. So I feel like the last few years it's just been like, yeah, a lot of reorienting. It is very confusing at times. I've also had to get really grounded because I was both chronically ill for so long and in Mormonism, that there was this sense of like double helplessness. So a lot of my thing has just been like very boring functional shit. Like instead of waiting for like, oh, I'll just pray and God will fix it. It's like, okay, let's just go fix it, and then we'll start interacting in a in our way with how the spirits, how the mother, how all the ancestors want to interact with us. And I think for me, it's been trying to get it as practical as possible as well. Like that is one thing I did love about Mormonism, is like, it's just normal. Like it's normal that you talk to you, that you pray every day. It's just normal. It's part of the routine. It's normal to like have, not every day, but occasionally have ancestors visit. It's not like that's some so weird thing that means you're a special, messenger of God. It's just, that's just realitying with you. Um, So I think that, yeah, for me it's been that, like, learning what I'm learning again those boundaries, like, because I feel like I actually went to a really closed place for a while where I was like I got so closed off because like I let in too much for too long, and it like drained my system. And so now I'm trying to find that, like, how do I where do I get to choose where to open, where do I get to choose where to close, what am I really seeking relationship with?
We're coming up on end time now. So before we close, I just want to ask what, because I feel like you've been mentioning this throughout, but indirectly. What kind of gifts did you receive from Mormonism in terms of how you understand community, responsibility, healthy service, healthy mysticism? Because I do feel like there is, we can talk all day about the shadowy bits, of course, but I do feel like there is a kind of um there's something healthy and important too that Mormons know how to do that a lot of us don't know how to do in terms of all these things. So yeah, what kind of gifts did you receive from this upbringing?
Yeah, I feel like sense of humor is so there and important, and um, being able to just laugh, not take yourself too seriously. Mormons are generally a humble people, and so a sense of humor, self-deprecating humor, laughter, really being able to say you're sorry, being able to look at yourself and examine yourself and go, okay, where was I in the wrong there? Now I can do it in a much more balanced way. But that was a gift. Creativity is such a gift. Thrift is such a gift of like I might going through those like years or different times where you don't have a ton of money, you just like there's a lot of like pioneer spirit of like wear it out, fix it, mend it, like you know there's a saying like poverty breeds creativity, like you just learn to like fucking make do and make it beautiful. And I can go into a kitchen of like random ass stuff and make a beautiful meal, you know. I can entertain 35, 45 people in my house like that. I don't always want to, but I can. There is definitely like a group field that I feel like I was really initiated into, of like you make a meal when someone has a baby, you make a meal train when someone needs a thing, you do a thing. Like I feel like Mormonism really showed me how to get out of myself and push past my discomfort if someone else is in need. You just stop your crying and you go do it. And there's a toughness there that comes in. Um, I think there's also like there is a compassion that I know that I was taught there. There's a compassion of like, yes, we're tough and yes, we're trying our best, but like at the end of the day, you need a place to rest and to place to like just be comforted. And especially Mormon women know how to do that for each other. Not always and not every situation, but in the quiet corners, maybe when no one's looking, there's a place where you can go cry on a sister's shoulder. And I was taught sisterhood. I know it in a deeper way now. I know it in a much deeper way now. But that's where those seeds were planted, you know. So yeah, I am forever thankful to my Mormon roots. I don't regret any of it. I'm so thankful. And I'm also so thankful for like the what I've been able to build upon that foundation too. And what I've been able to now find a sense of identity and self. And now I get to be the authority of my life. I get to be the sovereign now and say yes and say no and know what it feels like in my system to be truly in alignment with my spirit, instead of outsourcing that. Um, so yeah, I guess that's what I've got for now.
Yeah, it's funny because when I can go into the dark stuff, but it's also I appreciate being able to say this too because it's always been difficult when I tell people I'm ex-Mormon. It's so complicated. Like, yeah, I absolutely left for the reasons I left, and actually I was gonna almost say this at the last question is, if you believe that like whatever your beliefs about spiritual incarnation are, um, I absolutely believe I would have chosen to be Mormon because it's a place where the sacredness is cultivated in day to day life. And if you are a being in this environment that's so secular, and this, again, this is like very Mormon, like if you're looking down from the premortal existence and you're like going, which body and family do I go to? I could see the Mormons believe in there's a whole premortal existence and a very bad musical about it. But like Mormons believe that like yeah we're here embodied to learn, which actually is something, and that is something that's one of the things I carry still is like this embodied experience is a sacred learning. And one thing I love about Mormonism, even though the culture does not embody this, the doctrine absolutely says that the body, having a body, is one of the most incredible gifts that you could possibly have, no matter what that body is like. Just, it's literally the experience of being incarnated, of experiencing what it is to have a body. It's so funny. Yesterday, I was actually thinking of there's a scripture in Alma chapter 7, and I forgot the verse, but it was one that always spoke to me in Mormonism, where it talked about why Christ came on earth. And it said he had to come to know according to the flesh how to succor people, and he had to know these things according to the flesh and not according to the spirit. And it just always hit me that there is something so sacred about this body, this experience, that it is in this life, that it is in this body we know God. It is in this body we know what it is to be God, be like God in a way that you don't experience in that pure spiritual plane. And that I did love that about the theology is that even God said, Christ, who's separate from Heavenly Father in Mormon theology, but like Christ says, I have to become embodied. I cannot actually help people unless I actually know what it is to be sick, to be wounded, to be rejected. I cannot actually be of service if I do not physically embody those things. And that has stayed with me on a very deep level, that is part of this, is this school, if you will, of being mortal. And yeah, that there is a place that like it was normal to talk about spiritual matters day to day. It was normal to like, even if you had experiences people couldn't understand or they tried to put it in a box that didn't quite fit, it was still like people would still talk about it. Like it was like, yeah, the spirit world's real, and also let's go make casserole now. Um, like, you would totally. I think I have memories on my mission of like talking about like ghost stories while you're like doing, you're making things for people, and that is one of the things and that is the thing I miss dearly about Mormonism is that like it's that focus on like you are all uniting together in a group field. It's exactly what Anna was saying. There's a group field sensitivity that it's hard for me sometimes to go into other spaces because I get very sensitive when people are not attuning to the group field. Because especially if it's a group activity, I'm like, okay, that's great. We're all having this individual experience, but like and I'm not talking about enmeshment either. Like we're not enmeshing together. But like there is a way the group field is supposed to operate. I mean, even when we did Mundane Magic, Alyssa, like that there was this very strong sense of like we are creating a group field, and the group itself will then is the body. It's not just us individually plopping in. And the other thing is that I'm grateful is it taught me very basic structure for ritual. Like how you like, I mean, I even have the impulse. I'm like, and then we're going to have a closing song at the end of this, right? Because we've, like, there's just, you have this opening and this closing, and I'm loving this conversation because it reminds me to like make sure I'm maintaining that in all my practices. Cause sometimes I get away from that if I'm in too loosey-goosey spaces, and then things just kind of filter out. But yeah, those are, just this week we had a ritual at my home for someone who lost a loved one, and I was able to like make sure we had like I was like we did a closing, an opening and a closing, set apart the space, very simple. And then like literally the next day or two it was like I felt like the group field was like, now go check on the person, what do they need? So anyway, that feels like from Mormonism, like that sense of like, yes, you did your ritual, now go make the casserole, and like now go check on them, because that's all part of the whole thing. The spirituality is very woven into the day-to-day relationship.
Thank you both so much for being here. Yeah, I really appreciate your transparency and passion and how deeply you have thought about everything in your deconstruction processes. It's very impressive. Um, I just realized that not only is my child kind of melting down and needing me, but I have to run to teach a writing lesson. So hashtag mom life. I just feel like that needs to be part of the closing ritual, mentioning like, oh shit, now I, like we're speaking to this in so many other ways. But yeah, I've loved speaking with you and feel grateful, and like my heart is aching. So there is something very resonant and relevant here for people outside of this religious group as well, for sure. And I hope that we get to talk again at the supper table in the future. Okay, bye.
Bye.